Welcome to Pope's Plates, or welcome back if you're a current viewer. We're going to do something today that's a little different. A friend, I think I've mentioned before, in my neighborhood gets home delivered meals, and her husband doesn't eat either onions or mushrooms. So she sort of has become my mushroom and onion grocery store. And she called yesterday and she said, I've got 2 beautiful portobello mushrooms. Would you like to come get those? So I got them, and we're going to make crab stuffed portobello mushrooms today. Now, portobello mushrooms are really good for vegetarians because they have a meaty texture. This is what they look like. They've got gills on the inside, and we're going to scrape those out in a little bit. The first thing I'm going to do, however, is to cut the shallot. We're only going to use a half of it. We are publishing the entire recipe in the comments below. However, I only have 2 portobello mushrooms, and this calls for 4, so I halved the recipe. And it's easy to do. We're just going to make half of it today. And you slice the shallots very, very thinly. And we will put these in the mixture that goes with the crab meat. Shallots have a more mild flavor than onions do. Frequently when you cut the onions, you end up crying. With shallots, that doesn't really happen. So I'm slicing these as thin as I can, and then I'm going to chop them. There are a lot of ingredients with this crab meat stuffing, which I think is one of the reasons that it is so good. There would not be, this recipe would not be great for a vegetarian since it's got crab in it. However, there are some vegetarians that do in fact eat fish. So I'm going to put the shallots in our bowl here. I'm going to put in, I'm going to actually use the recipe here to cheat a little bit because it's got so many things in it. I'm going to put in 2 tablespoons of mayonnaise. And I'm going to add to that a heaping teaspoon of Dijon mustard. Got essentially 2 tablespoons of Parmesan cheese. And I'm going to get my grater. We're going to grate a little bit of mozzarella in here, and I have got a chunk of mozzarella, hard, so I'm going to get the grater and grate this up. I'll grate approximately 2 tablespoons of mozzarella into this as well. That looks like it. That's going to melt beautifully when we cook this. We also have got 1/4 cup of cream cheese. This has not been softened as much as it should have. We didn't get it out quite quickly enough. So I'm going to have to work this a little bit extra. Although it's coming along pretty well. I think you can see here it's getting pretty well smoothed up. So I'm going to add the equivalent of 1/2 clove of garlic. Now I'm just kind of eyeballing this. Maybe it's 1/2 teaspoon of garlic. We're also going to add Old Bay seasoning. This calls for 1/2 teaspoon of Old Bay. I'm going to get that out with my finger, nice clean fingers. Also, we're going to put in some Worcestershire sauce. This calls for 1/4 of a teaspoon. That's about that much, not very much. We're going to put in just a touch of lemon juice, about 1/4 of a teaspoon of lemon juice. I'm going to eyeball a little bit of pepper, a little bit of salt, and parsley. Now it calls for fresh parsley. I didn't have any, and frankly the weather outside where I am today is not great, so I'm going to use dried parsley, and this calls for about 2 tablespoons of parsley. That's good. All right, I'm going to mix this up well before I add the crab meat to it. It sure does smell good. This calls for about 1/2 cup of crab meat. I've got a little container here that has about a whole cup in it, so I'm going to add about half of this. And we'll save this other crab meat for another recipe. So again, let's get it all mixed up well. We don't want to break up the crab meat too much. So I'm going to set this aside and let's work on the mushrooms. I told you they had gills and a stem. You'll be able to see this when you open up the mushroom. You want to pull the stem out, which we're going to do with both mushrooms. And we want to get the gills out. And that is the little brown parts in here. So you just take a spoon and scrape it around on the inside and get the gills out. Kind of a mess. This one, you've got a little bit of the mushroom that kind of overlap. Whoops, cut off too big a piece there. Again, you want to leave the mushroom, if you can, intact and just get the gills out. It does make a mess, doesn't it? All right. Now I'm going to try to get this cleaned up for a moment before I come back to you, and we'll get the stuffing in the mushrooms and get them in the oven. To get the crumb mixture that sits on top of these portobello mushrooms as they bake, I need to melt a little bit of butter. So I'm going to turn the heat on pretty high to get this melted pretty quickly. I'm going to watch it because I don't want it to burn and turn brown butter, but we do need to have it melted. This will be mixed with panko breadcrumbs and sprinkled over the top of the filling that goes in the mushrooms. I'm going to brush the inside of the portobello mushrooms with a little bit of olive oil. And I'm going to turn them over and brush the outside. This just keeps them moist when they're baking. And they're on a no-stick sheet on the baking pan. Now I'm going to take half of our mixture of crab meat with impeccably clean fingers and fill up the cavity of the first of our mushrooms, the second of our mushrooms. And I want to make sure that I get all of this delicious filling in here. Let me make sure I've got every last little bit. Okay, that does look good. Okay, now the breadcrumb topping. We're going to take about a quarter cup of breadcrumbs. Charlie, this is not for puppies. I'm just going to kind of eyeball this. And I'm going to mix the butter, 2 tablespoons of butter with the breadcrumbs. Okay. And let's put these on top. Now, I should have mentioned, we preheated our oven, 375 degrees. We're going to cook these for about 20 minutes, and you'll see the topping on the top gets really crunchy and brown. So once they're cooked, we'll be back. The timer just went off, so now I'm going to pull these mushrooms out of the oven. Let's see what they look like. Ooh, oh, pretty, pretty, pretty. That looks beautiful. I can hardly wait to dig in. These really do look very, very good. They're crispy on the top from the breadcrumb with butter, and the mushrooms held their shape beautifully. I can hardly wait to dig into these. If you like this recipe, please tell us in the comment section below. And until we see you again, let's keep cooking.